Welcome, everybody, to Zeta Global Radio. I hope you're feeling the energy that we've been having backstage getting ready for this. We have Andi and Jonathan Goldman here, and we are going to have an amazing discussion, very enlightened, very educational. We may bridge science and spirit and everything in between. And for me, as many of you have been Zeta Global Radio listeners and now watchers, I was doing this well before we were doing video chats. This almost feels like we're rounding out the A-team, because over the last couple of years, we've had Dr. Bruce Lipton and Greg Braden. We've had Dr. Deepak Chopra on, and even actually back in the day, and he's now making headlines again. I don't know if you all know Stuart Pearce, who was Princess Diana's vocal coach. So we have been navigating this understanding that our body is so brilliant and beautiful and enlightened, and there's so much we don't know yet. So to have Andi and Jonathan here is such a wonderful honor, and I'm so excited to just share everything that we're going to talk about today. Before I introduce them a little bit more formally, I do want to thank and welcome Camille Leone and the Holistic Chamber of Commerce for presenting this wonderful opportunity to share with the HEC members and all the global people who watch the panels there, this wonderful time we're going to have together. So hello, welcome, and let me give you a little bit of an introduction of Andi and Jonathan Goldman. A little bit together in both, but really, I think I need my glasses for this. Without even saying, they have dedicated their lives to a path of service to help awaken and empower others. If you didn't know that, they are just wonderful, soul-hearted beings. Of course, Jonathan Goldman is a Visionary Award winner, Grammy nominee. He's the founder and director of the Sound Healers Association. And also, Andi, you are a licensed psychotherapist specializing in holistic counseling and sound therapy. You are also the director of Healing Sound Seminars and co-director of the Sound Healing Association. But together, you're doing amazing things. I love that. I work with my husband as well a lot. You have co-authored Chakra Frequencies, and you are the winner of the Visionary Award for that, Best Alternative Health Book. And now this book, Small but Mighty. I thought, I'm just going to zip through this. I took my time. I studied everything page to page. I downloaded it. I just loved it. The Humming Effect, which won the 2018 Gold Visionary Award for Best Health and Healing Book. So it is my honor to have Andi and Jonathan Goldman here.
Well, and Lainey, it is our honor to be here. Thank you for having us. It's going to be a great show.
What a blessing on this pre-solstice energy.
You know what? Spirit always makes the timing, right? I just never know how it's all going to come together, but that is perfect. So we're probably wondering where to start, and I just thought maybe you can just give an overview of briefly, because I have so many questions, but really, why are we here today? Why are we talking about this? And why is this one of your dharmas? I know you have many and you're making such big differences, but maybe where humming came into the mix of it all in a brief little intro. We'll start there.
Great question. From my perspective, Andi and I have been teaching together for quite a while. And one of the things that we found, particularly, was that we do a lot with the voice. We certainly do things with tuning forks and all sorts of other modalities, but particularly the voice, because everybody has got a voice. But also, particularly with the advent of shows such as American Idol and all these others, it's really brought into our consciousness some new terms such as pitchy, and you really listen, say, is that person in tune or out of tune? We've become so judgmental about other people's voices and about our voices. So we want to have people make sound and resonate and feel and experience healing sounds. But if you like judgmental about your voice, if you don't like your voice, how are you going to do this? So Andi and I looked at each other and said, okay, what's the one sound that nobody has judgment about? We went,
And Lainey, we have worked with so many different mantras and toning, exercises, and modalities, and over 25 years of working together, so many different sounds. And humming is such a very, very simple sound that literally everybody can make, for little babies, up through every age into the elderly population. And we have never, as Jonathan was saying, we've never heard anybody say, I'm just not a very good hummer.
Well, that's true. In fact, what you just said was one of my first quotes. I took several quotes from the book that we'll be touching on, but the first one was, humming may be one of the most powerful natural abilities we possess. I mean, that's just, for someone to take that in for a moment and not realize the importance of our own healing toolbox, and that the vocal range and the frequencies and everything that we're going to talk about today is one of those vital components in our healing toolbox. It's amazing. And so I'm looking forward to sharing more of the why, which we'll get into. I mean, I want to talk about the vagus nerve, lowering blood pressure, and everything in between.
Well, we certainly want to talk about all that stuff, but basically, here's just one more thought. The world of sound healing, oftentimes people go, well, I don't have a degree in music. I'm not a trained vocalist. I can't play an instrument. I can't do it. And so it then becomes very exclusive. We wanted to make the world of sound inclusive of everyone, which is why, once again, we wrote the first book on humming. And as we said, it was a real choice to do it because we have written about chakra frequencies, the divine name, harmonically oriented vowel sounds, mantras, all sorts of things, but something that would pull everyone in. I like to say that, how they used to say that marijuana was a gateway drug?
Yes.
Sound.
I think I've heard that.
Yeah, sound. Humming is a gateway sound. It opens up and brings people into the world of sound.
Well, have you always been I'm sorry, Andi, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and it also gives people that ability, once they start working with their own voice, their own sound through humming, it opens a doorway to let them kind of get, wait a minute, there is something really powerful about this, and I can do it. And they then go into other avenues of sound. And that was really one of our major goals.
So let me just take it a step back, and we'll dive in. For those of you who may not know your iconic careers, was sound always in resonance, if you will, like that you knew that this was the path you're going to take? Or for people who may not know your background, you want to maybe just share like what brought you into the world of like, wow, I'm really going to share all things sound in my life and study it to the nth degree and more, and even educate people who are so scientific and doctors and all that. I mean, you brought in many people's horizons.
Real quick, first I'll tell my story.
Yeah.
I've been playing professionally as a musician since I was about 15 years old. Maybe before that, when the Beatles first came on, I gave up piano, taught myself how to play guitar, etc. I had a fairly illustrious youth. Then I went to film school at Boston University. Then I was playing in a rock and roll band. And one night when I was on stage, actually going on stage from a break in Marshfield, Massachusetts, which is Cape Cod, I'm playing in a seaside bar with a band. I strap on my Stratocaster, I start playing, I start singing, I look out at the audience and I realize that the ambiance in the club is one of negativity and violence.
Mm.
And I realized that the music that I'm creating at that time was helping induce the ambiance of negativity and violence. Now, I've been playing professionally for about 15 years or more, and I'd never had that thought. And the thought was, what if music can be used to make people feel better? That's the thought that I had. Within a week, it shifted and changed and became, what if sound can be used to heal? A week later, I'm given a flyer with a workshop announcing a healing with sound and music. I went to it and was basically brought face to face with our dear mentor, Sarah Benson, who one of my books, Seven Secrets of Sound Healing, was dedicated to her. We call her the Divine Mother of Sound.
What a great name.
And she's the godmother of our son, among other things. She's in the angelic plane, so she's even here now. We can feel her. She says hello. Okay.
My daughter's name is Sarah.
Yeah, but and after that, I basically got a master's degree from Lesley University in Cambridge, formed the Sound Heroes Association, took my music label, which was at the time a new wave label, and I changed it to a new age label, a therapeutic music label. And the only thing I didn't have to change was the name of the company. It was called Spirit Music then, and it's called Spirit Music now, aka Healing Sounds.
Wow, I love that. And you got me actually thinking as you said that about Krishna Das, who of course was at one point going to be the lead singer of Blue Oyster Cult, and then he went to India, had his awakening, and the rest is history there. So I love that journey. I love all of your journeys. How about you, Andi?
Well, my journey is a little bit different. And as a psychotherapist, holistic psychotherapist, I used a lot of expressive therapies in my practice. And so I was, with sound, and of course, I've been involved in metaphysical areas since my early 20s, back in the 70s. And so I knew a lot of people who worked with sound, and I, kind of was on the periphery of that. And yet there was something about it that was very much in resonance with me. And I had a dear, dear friend. I don't know if you remember Don Campbell. He did the Mozart effect. And yeah. And anyway, he and I had known each other for years and years. And it was through him that I met Jonathan. And so Jonathan, this incredible pioneer in the field of sound. And I was, whoa, this man has come into my life. Aha. You know what? I like sound. I'm into sound. But boy, did I ever dive in head. It was like, how could
That's probably gets old, does it, Jonathan, to have Andi say that? That never gets old, having her share that story.
Well, I'm going to sing her praises for a minute, because I have to say that in the 1990s, before we met Andi, some people perceive that I'm one of these, shall we say, pioneers in the field of sound healing, at least in the modern.
You are.
You are, yes.
All right, so Andi is a pioneer in the field of coaching, to such a degree that in the early 90s, she had something called telecounsel, which was a telephone counseling service where inbound clients would call her, and she would basically counsel them. And then she basically began to teach people how to do that, and that evolved into coaching. So she was written up in the New York Times and all this stuff. She was literally maybe the first coach on the planet in terms of this stuff. And in order to do that and to really do it well, you got to have a great ear and a great voice to be able to heal through hearing people and through making sound on the telephone. It's such a gift.
And of course, that was way back in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, doing this. I think there's a little distortion if you turn your volume. I'm thinking that's going to help a little bit from what we're feeling. All right, I want to bring us forward because there's so much to talk about in this incredible.
Lady, is this better? Because it was way up.
Yeah, I think that's going to do it.
Thank you.
Well, let's dive into the humming effect. For those of you, you can get this on Amazon. I've been posting the links everywhere. What a really, really special book. And you brought so many of the wonderful scientists and players. Some have been on my show that we've talked about, and all have brought forward such great wisdom. But I really wanted to just talk about the fact that people may not know. Of course, I didn't even know the extent of it. And I actually was taking a class even earlier this morning about connecting into your meridians and learning how to get your electrical health going. And I was thinking, wow, that's what humming is doing too. And now I know that to such greater extent because of your book. I mean, I just wrote lowers blood pressure, heart rate, releases vital hormones. But I really wanted to talk about, from you, more if you kind of just touch on why or how you've discovered it's so healthy and what is it really doing for the body. And I don't even know how you're going to condense that, but just maybe a couple minutes.
Easy, because, okay, we decided we were going to write a book on humming, and we knew humming was important. Why, how, and why in a moment. We said, how are people going to take the subject of humming seriously? Come on, everybody can hum. Why would you take the subject of humming seriously? Hey, what if we made the first chapter nothing more or less than peer-reviewed information about the physiological benefits of humming? And that's what we did. And that, I think, was the linchpin in which everything else was built, because people read this and indeed they see that you can get the reduction of heart rate and respiration, blood pressure, which is huge. Doing it on a pharmaceutical level, huge. You get the release of melatonin. You get the release of oxytocin. Melatonin, of course, is great for Andi.
Sleeping, for sure.
Yeah.
And we get, did you get oxytocin?
No, I don't think. Maybe I did.
The trust hormone.
You did. How about nitric oxide?
And nitric oxide, that is the big deal. And nitric oxide has been getting so much attention out in the media. And nitric oxide is, through humming, we release that. And we release that up here, first and foremost, in our nasal cavity.
So, and it's two things. It's a vasodilator, which means that the blood flows through your body more readily and throughout your body. We have blood vessels all over. Nitric oxide is a vasodilator. It promotes healing, and it is an antiviral agent. So if you hum, you get the release of nitric oxide in your nasal cavity. And a lot of these nasty critters, shall we say, house themselves first in the nasal cavity before they go on to other parts of our body. Yeah. And if you can basically hum for a few minutes, you can release nitric oxide, which will take care of these beings. We know of people who, and doctors actually recommend this. We know of people who've had sinusitis and have taken all sorts of antibiotics, not worked. They've hummed for a little while, a couple of weeks, and they've written us and they've gone, this is the key. This is what has gotten rid of it. So that is way cool too.
And not only the nitric oxide, which has so many incredible healing benefits, but as from a psychotherapist perspective, we are experiencing so much stress in our current culture.
Sure.
And by the simple act of humming, and by the way, we call it conscious humming. By the simple act of conscious humming, we are able to reduce that level of stress, to be able to feel more balance and come into more of a place of feeling relaxed, which helps to, let go, release the cortisol, and really bring us into a healthful, harmonious, physical, mental, spiritual place through the simple act of conscious humming.
And let me ask you, let you ask you a question first.
Go ahead.
No, you have to understand that we, for 20 plus years, would do a 10-day healing sounds intensive that was live, that 100 people in a room, because that's all we would take into, because we did it in a circle. But we would go from 9 in the morning till about 9 at night with breaks and stuff. But, so we can keep going for a really long time if you don't stop us.
So, lady,
I'm stopping you. You know what I know we're talking about some of the different parts of the body, but what also got my attention, obviously from the spiritual point of view, is how it's affecting the pineal gland. And of course, obviously you mentioned melatonin, which is also in the pineal gland. But just, when people are thinking about their third eye and really wanting to open up the intuition and really connect to the divine, that you're saying that humming is a gateway for that as well, if I have it understood correctly.
Well, that's great. And that brings me to another one. Golly gee, so there's a lot of things to talk about. But, working with conscious humming, and we're going to talk about that more, but very simply, it's closing your eyes, breathing deeply, doing a consistent tone, not humming zippity doo dah. That's great, but here you go. And then you focus your attention, you work with your pitch a little bit. And that one, for example, as I was doing it, that's resonating right here. But if I were to move it, that's resonating over here. Okay, so just a slight bit of attention and stuff. So it is definitely working with the pineal. But here's just a thought as we go on. I'm going to roll. Wait a minute. It's the fact that there are these different mantras, okay? And one of the mantras for the third eye particularly is the Om, yes? It is. And did you know, here we go, from the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali's, thousands of years old, Sutra 1.27. Basically, this is Jonathan Goldman's abbreviation. The original sound of creation was the humming of prana, the humming of energy, pranava. They had to give it a name, so they called it Om. So the Om came from the Hum. So when people are oming, they're actually obviously humming with a little bit of Om, closing the mouth. That is way cool with the Om. And there is actually a very advanced yogic technique called Brahmari Pranayama, which is one of the great Shabd yoga, if you like, sound current yoga things. That's simply doing conscious humming with your eyes closed, and some people will block their ears. That's all it is. But you can take that and go into different dimensions with that. I'm done. All right.
Well, I wanted to just ask, because you mentioned that, and of course, I think one of your most iconic pieces, you have many, but is the ultimate Om. I know even when we do our certification courses and the meditation, my partner Joanna said, what music do you want to have in the back? I'm like, the ultimate Om. There's not even a second thought. So I just wondered, was all this into play when you developed that, or did this humming science come later?
Humming science came later. In fact, before the ultimate Om, we did something called Cosmic Hum, which is just slightly different from ultimate Om, but it's different enough. I highly advise you get that one too, because they're both great and they're both vibrationally different. And so the Cosmic Hum is a little bit different than ultimate Om. They're very similar and they're both really cool. And Cosmic Hum, if you like stimulated the humming effect, we go, wow, this is really cool. What else can we find out?
Well,
go ahead, Andi.
I want to just mention when you were talking about, humming and, opening up the third eye and the pineal gland, etc. Well, I just want to let our audience know that back in the 80s, Jonathan created a formula: frequency plus intent equals healing. So the intention that we place on our sound is extremely important and powerful. And so if people are humming and they have that intention of saying, you know what, I want to open up that third eye and I'm going to hum into, you're going to put that intention in that particular place. And that's going to give it more emphasis and more power. So I wanted to bring in the intention because we'll talk more about that with humming and being able to use that in different parts of our body.
Right, and intention is so majorly important. And when that first came to me in the mid 80s, I had this formula: frequency plus intent equals healing. And I'm working with these doctors and the scientists, and I'm going, have you ever thought of the importance of humming? They'd look at me like I was, yeah, right. Then it was intention. Now it's humming. Back then it was intention. They look at me like I was like from another planet, which may be true. But nowadays you have people like Bruce Lipton and Joe Dispenza and all these people, talking about the importance of our belief, our intention, how we can encode our consciousness on the things and how that really shifts and changes reality.
Well, I think that, I mean, of course, you mentioned Dr. Bruce Lipton. I know there's a little bit, I'm not sure why that's happening, but the whole philosophy of epigenetics, the whole philosophy of the consciousness of our cells, and that we can have that understanding that we are responsible, but we are direct players into that intention. I mean, I wrote in my notes, intention, whether you're fighting cancer or like this, you know, I've had a little bit of a foot injury and I've been humming into my foot. Like I've been really embracing what you said. And it's interesting. It's a quick little sidebar, but many years ago, I'm not sure if you know who she is, but she was one of the grandmother Florida Maya was one of the 13 indigenous grandmothers. She came to our recording studio after doing the closing prayer at the Parliament for World Religions. And she came in, she says to my husband, I'd like to record a hum. And I said, okay. And, you know, Howard talks to her and, you know, I've worked with grandmother Florida Mile, but basically she had a hum that had been in her lineage for years, and she wanted to record to it and add words to it. And it wasn't until I was reading your book that I thought, wow, grandmother Florida Maya like had the hum thing going many years ago. And it was just amazing. And I'll have to send you the track. We put it out on our record label, but it was quite beautiful, but it just brought everything like current for me after reading your book, how important, like, wow, they had it in their lineage that this is a sacred ceremony for the body.
Beautiful. We knew Grandma Aggie, who was, she was an incredible being.
We met her in Australia in 2012 for, you know, a 12/12 event.
I was with all of them in Kathmandu, and of course, grandmother Florida Maya. We're sidebarring everybody. Lives in New Mexico, where I used to be. But yes, I was with everybody in Kathmandu, Nepal, and they're just beautiful beings. But that's, you know, here we are bringing in resonance. So this is fantastic. Can I move on to just maybe talk about Dr. Emoto a little bit?
Oh, yes.
Because I love that you brought him in. We, as I mentioned earlier about the food healing oracle deck, we talk about the consciousness of food, but he's talking about the consciousness of water. And I would love for you to talk about that just from your perspective with sound. And of course, you mentioned earlier your start of negative music per se. And so it just how you brought it all together in the book. And yes, everyone has I'm not giving it all away, but I would love to just maybe if you want to touch on where you were going with some of that, because it's so important.
Well, I have had the pleasure of working with Masaru Emoto's slides for many, many years. I was one of the first, if you like, turned on to it. And it turns out that he then later did some slides of some of my music with beautiful results, but that's another story. But bottom line was that he would take water, basically freeze the water, but the water would have, if you like, different intentionalities, projected into it, different sounds, different vibrations. People would even rate names such as love or hate or whatnot, and put that on the water, and then it would be frozen. And then as the water crystal was thawing out, they would look at it through a dark field microscope, and if it was positive, it would take on the most beautiful geometric pictures, looking somewhat like a snowflake. And if it was like, shall we say, negative or imbalanced, it would look like mud. That simple and that important. But one of my favorite ones was this water that was polluted from the Fujiwara Dam in Japan and looked like mud. And they had a Buddhist priest chant the Heart Sutra, Gate Gate Taragate Saparasam Gate Bodhisvaha, over it for 20 minutes. We photographed it and it looked like a perfect crystal. I thought, okay, if the water in our body and our planet, 70% of it is water. And if we can shift this with our consciousness, with prayers, with intentionality, think on that for a minute. I don't even need to tell you where the importance of that one.
Well, it goes along with one of your quotes. Sound may be the fundamental creational energy of the universe. I'm just going to tie in all your quotes back to you because they fit.
You know, Lenny, I want to jump in just for a second, because speaking about water and speaking about the 13 indigenous grandmothers and Grandma Aggie, she shared with us that every single time she takes a drink of water, she passes by a pond, any water at all, she says, thank you.
Yes.
And to this day, in the morning, when I drink a big, huge gulp of, big glass of water, thank you for filling up my body with this incredible water. I am so appreciative. And I think that intention and water, there you go. It's just healing.
It's beyond healing. Thank you for that. Wow, that's just a beautiful, tie that up in a bow. Okay. I wanted to talk about, and of course, there's a lot of yogis, I'm sure, watching this or will be, and there's a lot in the Holistic Chamber of Commerce. We have a wonderful array of members. One of them is yoga instructors. But you brought in talking about diaphragmatic breathing. Diaphragmatic breathing, if I'm saying it. So I just thought maybe you can touch on that in regards to humming so we can kind of make that connection before we move on.
Love to do that, Lainey, because part of conscious humming involves conscious breathing. And when we are doing diaphragmatic breathing, we call it belly breathing because you're just taking in that, that inhale, you're expanding your belly, you're filling up that, that diaphragm is lowered, there's more air that is into the lungs. And that helps to, first of all, relax the body. But then that conscious breathing also supports our conscious humming. So before we do any humming, we do conscious breathing, diaphragmatic breathing. And that seems to amplify. And, when we then take that intention and want to send that hum to our foot, or we want to send that hum to our third eye, or we might have even a headache we want to send that hum to, our body is allowing that to move in an easier way.
And of course, you wouldn't have sound if you didn't have breath.
Without our breath, there is no sound.
No question. And it's interesting, you were showing demonstrations of how you, was it closing your ears or your nose? There's something you can't hum or you couldn't.
We're going to play that game together, Lainey, if that's okay with you. Okay.
Yeah, well, play. I'm here to play.
Okay. So, because we often do this just as one of the beginning things in a workshop. They say, okay, so the only instruction on how to hum for the most part, we like to say, sit up straight with, et cetera, take a nice deep breath. But then sonically, just make a comfortable sound that, is within your range. But bottom line is your lips have to be sealed. If your mouth is open, it's not a hum. It's not an official hum. So with that in mind, I want you to start humming for a couple of seconds and then pinch your nose. So everybody can see that I'm, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Are we doing it together or is it just me?
No, I'm going to watch you and
I'm
see.
I'm so on the spot here. Okay.
Okay.
Nothing.
You can't hum if your nose is pinched. Now, 90%, it's a reality. I learned that while we were writing the book when I was reading a kid's book on sound, which had that. I didn't know it. I'd only been in the sound field for about 30 years at that time, doing extensive stuff. I didn't know that you couldn't hum if your nose was pinched. But I thought, okay, there's so many people in the sound field who know so much about sound. Okay, and you do that and they go, whoa, I didn't know this. Okay, if you didn't know that about the hum, do you think maybe there's some other things that we can share with you?
At least. Someone years ago, I used to go to these a spiritual conference. I've been to many. But when you came back from lunch and everyone was a little ungrounded and feeling a little out of body from the first morning session, we would do the letter E from the base of the spine all the way up and back down again. And then I'm reading and I was like, oh, this is perfect. But learning to hum that, I can really feel the whole system. So I just was so glad you brought that forward and presence that for people, because that was one of my favorite, and listen to all your audio tracks was about the spine. I know we segued a little, but I just thought that whole piece about humming up and down your spine is such a gift for people.
It's way cool. And regarding the vowel sounds, we like to mostly, and we often say, if you do an ooh sound, an ah sound, an e sound, they're going to vibrate 3 different parts of your body. Even this is, if you like speech pathology, it has nothing to do with the, and it also happens to have something to do with the chakras. But this is scientific. And the o or the oo is going to be the lower part of your body, your belly. The ah is going to be the heart. If you want to talk about the heart chakra, Buddha, Krishna, Tara, even when we're in love, and then the e is going to vibrate the top of your head. So and you can of course take any sound, project it anywhere with the proper intention.
So is it the same as if you were doing a tuning fork, a crystal bowl, it's the same process, I guess.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, because I guess you're looking at the same level of decibel? No, not the decibel. What would you be looking at? You're saying because it's deeper in the root area, because you're saying ooh, and then it felt much lighter as you went up with the E.
Okay, just because I want to get back to the humming, and this is a whole nother thing.
Okay, well, I'm going to have you on again, and we're going to talk about that.
But with vowel sounds, so these things called harmonics that occur whenever a sound is being created, the geometric multiples of the sound, they're the color of sound, and different harmonics are created when you make different vowel sounds. So you have certain harmonics, ooh versus versus e. They're just different harmonics which create different physical resonances.
Beautiful. All right, let's get back to
my first book, Healing Sounds, which is going to have its 30th anniversary next year, and it's going to be re-released with that, talks about that stuff.
Congrats.
Okay, we're back to that humming.
If we do get back to humming, I do want to mention that when we are humming, it's like giving yourselves an internal massage. And now what I want to tell our audience and you, lady, is that there are 2 ways in which we actually experience sound. One is psychoacoustically, and that is where the sound, we're listening. The sound goes in through our ears, travels down our auditory pathways into our brain, affecting our nervous system, our heart rate, etc. The other way is called vibroacoustics. Vibroacoustics is where the sound goes directly into our body, affecting us on a cellular level. Mm-hmm. When we are humming, we have found that that is the most powerful vibroacoustic sound that we can make. And so humming is, there's all these pieces of humming that we just love, because humming, so simple, yet so effective and powerful.
I wrote that down, internal sonic massage. I said, well, that's what I'm going to focus on, is humming I want an internal sonic massage today. I'm going to go hum. Leave me alone.
And really, this is a thought. Why are you doing that? You can project a color down there. You can project an intention for what the massage is doing. Do you want it to be going with white or gold light or blue? What is your purpose? You can project all sorts of different, you can put geometric forms there, whatever you are gifted in doing, but it's quite extraordinary. So sound as a carrier wave of consciousness, vocalization plus visualization equals manifestation.
So for the people who are watching this and they're saying, wow, I'm really resonating with humming. I'd like to try this. I'd like to go for this. How long, what's significant for shifts and change, whether it's consciousness, the body? I know everyone's different, but how long should someone hum for if they're just starting out?
Well, if they are just starting out, humming, whether you're humming for 1 minute, 30 seconds, or 5 minutes. I mean, we recommend in our book, a 5-minute exercise where you find a place where you won't be disturbed and you can just hum for 5 minutes. Then you're in silence. You're letting the shifts and changes occur in that silence. So there are a variety of, whatever. We are all unique vibratory beings. And so we're going to be affected vary differently by different time limits, different sounds. And so I always just say, hey, just go with your flow. And, just sit quietly, take some nice deep diaphragmatic breaths, and just begin to hum and let your intuition guide you to letting you know what feels right within your own body, mind, and spirit.
Beautiful. So you mentioned, we'll say prior to COVID or in the future, do you do humming retreats? I know people do also silent retreats. And do you do humming retreats for people to just hum all weekend?
We may. The world of sound is such an incredible smorgasbord. It's like even if you're juicing, unless you're totally on celery juice for a week, well, you could do that. I don't know if you need to do a retreat, but perhaps you could use a whole smorgasbord of different health foods. So when we teach together, there's so much in the world of sound. But at the same time, if you do humming, I have had some students that, particularly during COVID, I do these long distance slings and teach them different humming techniques for like 5 minutes a day. And they are coming to the greatest of healing and transformational experiences simply doing this, including in terms of also learning to resonate their chakras with the hum and vibrate different parts of the body. So, as Andi said, probably 5 minutes of humming and then another 5 minutes of being in silence, because number one, silence is the yin to the yang of sound. Silence is a place where the true frequency shifting occurs. But also, it's in silence that people get so blissed out from humming because of the release of these different neurochemicals and all this other stuff that literally they can't get up. So we say, hey, if you got to go drive your car, give yourself at least 5 minutes to get grounded.
That silence is so important, and I always like to share with our students, etc., that when you are in that silence, you really can listen within. And that is where you begin to really hear your inner voice. And I have a fun little factoid here that silent, and listen are anagrams. They each have the exact same letters in them. So there is something about being silent and something about being able to listen. And you put those together after you've hummed, and it can take you to places that perhaps you haven't been before. That would be very positive.
Beautiful. I'm going to throw a quote out that was in your book. It may be a little heady for some of you all, but it grabbed my attention, and you're probably wondering which one in your whole incredible book, but here it goes. The relationship expressed in the periodic table of elements resembles overtone structure in music, as do the orbital distance of planets. Do you know how long I had to really take that one in? Can we even explain that? Or should I just not? I just was like, wow, I love these two.
So that basically was first stated in Healing Sounds, which I mentioned is subtitled The Power of Harmonics. And I mentioned that harmonics or overtones are geometric multiples. And I hope at some point in time and space that we can begin to, shall we say, reawaken human consciousness to the fact that there are almost no such things as single tone frequencies, at least not in nature. They are laboratory created, they are called sound waves, but whenever you hear a musical instrument, whether it's a guitar, an oboe, a piano, or a flute, those are all replete with different overtones that make them have their own very special sound. And this includes our voice. So right now, people are really into, hey, what's the frequency? No. Frequency is actually a misnomer. It should be frequencies and what is the harmonic relationship. I know that this is very heavy, but I just want people to
realize. I had
realize.
to throw it in there because it just, I come from music, and it's just, I really was like.
Lainey, just the way that you take a crystal or a prism and you hold it into clear light and it breaks it up into the different bandwidths of the electromagnetic spectrum, i.e. color. So the same thing occurs when we have sounds that are there. They're just simply happening simultaneously, but you can break them up, and you can even also learn to basically make tones. I don't know if the microphone just cut that out, but there were a number of different harmonics that were being created just so people could maybe hear that, maybe not. Could you hear that at all or not?
I did.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so as we wind down a little bit, I want to just, do you want to practice humming, or do you want to give any sharings of where we can go? If there are people watching right now, or whenever they watch the replay of this, they can follow along, and then of course continue on and get the book and all the download recordings you offer. But let's do it.
We would love to do a brief, and we probably won't do
Sure,
5 minutes worth of humming, but we'd love to take our audience through an experience so that they will have that experience of humming within their own selves. So,
and, bottom line is that we're probably just going to do 3. So we're going to want everybody, before they begin, just remember to check yourself out before you do it. So you notice, even with 3 hums, any shift you may be feeling in your emotional body, your neurological system, your physical body, or whatnot, because it's quite amazing what people have. And of course, the first thing that we begin with
is breath work. So what we're going to do, what I'm going to ask our audience to do is to, if you can, if you're in a place where it's possible, to close your eyes, sit up straight, and take a few nice deep breaths, gentle breaths, breathing in and out, and letting go of anything that is not serving you in this moment, letting go of any stress, and begin to just feel your body going into a state of feeling relaxed, breathing in and breathing out. And we're going to, in this capacity, begin to do a series of 3 hums, but we'll take a deep breath and then hum. So the first one, take a deep breath in and begin to hum at your own pace. Breathing in and begin to hum. And one And now we'll be in silence for a few moments.
just checking yourself out. And just on a personal level, I can tell you that even with those 3 little hums, I'm a little lightheaded, a whole lot more relaxed, and I almost don't feel like opening my eyes, but I will, because it's not good video to be just sitting there.
Lady, what was your experience?
Well, I see a lot of colors. So for me, I saw a lot of colors moving up and down my spine, the chakra system. I saw very expansive in the crown. And I felt not lightheaded, but I felt more buoyant. And normally you would be breathing out, or not normally, but, I'm accustomed to just breathing out the Om. In this case, I kept it all inward. So maybe that I went in. It was great.
Lovely.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
And when we find this type of stuff is, it's useful for treatment. Also, if it's done therapeutically for any sort of traumatic stress, for example. And just as a thing, perhaps we're going to go here in a minute, but I just wanted to suggest too that we have a chapter in the book called The Humming Hypothesis, which talks about the use of humming to potentially work with different neurological imbalances. And this is something that literally 35 years ago, I was involved in a program where I was going to be doing research with, if you like, neural synaptic connections using self-created sound. And I was unable to do that because my first book came out. I went on tour, and that's what happened. But we got back to this, and of course, in the book, there is, if you like, this hypothesis that the subharmonics of our brain waves and the harmonics of the hum will meet, coalesce, and train with each other, affect each other, and literally break up a lot of the things that cause some nasty imbalances. And a quick story is beloved Andi's mom had a stroke. And she was down in Florida, and we were talking to her. And we could tell, because, we both kind of read voices over the phone, that her voice was a little slurred, for want of a better term. And I said, Ma Betty, which is what I called her, I said, could you find out where in your head the stroke occurred? And then would you mind humming for 5 minutes and projecting the sound to that? And she was a good old gal. She knew we were kind of strange, and she was up for anything. So she did it. And the first day, didn't notice anything. Second day, really not much. Third day, she was back to normal. I've spoken to a number of doctors who said that's pretty remarkable. And I know of other stories like that. They're anecdotal, but they say that the plural of anecdote is data.
I have that down. I'm so glad you mentioned that story. Really, I embraced, and I called a friend who's recovering from a stroke, and I said, you need to get this book and watch on Saturday, where she has more, her brain function's wonderful, but there's some physical challenges. And so I said, you have to hum into these areas. But I'm so glad you brought that up, because I did make a post earlier this week. Can situations like a stroke be supported by humming? And so the answer is yes.
I mean, as Jonathan was saying, it's anecdotal, but we really saw such a difference in my mom.
And other people too, as a matter.
Yeah. And I think.
And it can't hurt. I mean, bottom line.
Yeah, it can't hurt.
That's it. Just try it and see, because it cannot hurt. But I think that what I want to say too is that we really are our own best laboratories. And I like to say that because when we do something as simple as conscious humming, we are empowering ourselves to be our own therapist, basically. Yeah. And so we have within us the power to shift and change. And something like humming is a great tool that can be that jumping off point to help that shift and change.
Beautiful. And I didn't want to gloss over what you said, Jonathan, but that quote, the plural of anecdote is data, I want that to sit in people's minds for a minute as well, because that is so true, especially for all of us who are saying there is a hidden message in food, which my business partner and we're trying to tell them that food has a message. It's like, You know what? The plural of antidote is data. See what it's like to put a piece of mango, which is our joy card. See what it's like to feel the joy as you're eating that mango. And so when I read that quote, I mean, it was just a great section of your book. I was like, I love these people.
Oh, well, I love what you just said, Lainey. Yeah. Feel the joy when you're eating that mango. You know, that's what it's all about. And it's like with the water, thanking the water. It's like looking at that mango, looking at that beautiful food that you prepared and just putting that intention of how it's going to just nurture your body and your mind and your spirit.
Thank you, right?
It's all frequency. It's all vibration.
Something wants to come through right now. I just want to share this with you.
Okay.
Relating to Emoto, relating to literally being able to shift the vibrational content of the food that you eat with your love and your positivity. And that is this. When we are in a state of love, our electromagnetic field blossoms out 50 to 500 or more times. It's called heart-brain coherence. But there is a reason why the different prayers and meditations on our planet are, for the most part, vocalized. They're whispered, chanted, sung, spoken, but they're vocalized, and that's because sound amplifies the power of prayer, the power of our meditations, the power of our manifestations. It's, once again, it's these simple things that we need to remember because they're so gosh darn important.
So it is, so it is, so it is. Thank you for being here and really just sharing so much wisdom that I know will make impacts for people. Joanna says here, she wrote, I'm loving every second of this. Actually had a humming session with a client last week. It allowed quite a shift. So I watched, somebody was talking about, there was a post about nitric oxide earlier. I saw scrolling and someone said, you need to try humming. I was like, ooh, yes, they do. So you're making your mark once again. And I'm so grateful we had this time together. Thank you. Is there anything else you want to share as we call it a wonderful afternoon here?
Okay, right. Well, we have a little affirmation that we'll share, but before we do, we want to just say to you, Lainey, thank you for the work that you're doing and getting this information out to so many people. We are grateful.
Oh,
so
thank you. Thank you. Much appreciated.
We like to say, we heal the planet.
We heal ourselves.
We heal ourselves.
And we heal the planet.
We can make a choice. And we have a difference.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. Another big thank you to Camille Leone, to the Holistic Chamber of Commerce for this amazing opportunity to share this important work that we are all doing, right? We're all in one accord here. Thank you for being here this afternoon. Please share this with as many people that you feel in resonance to do so. I'm Lainey Savante Wolkin. Have a blessed rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you.